Hello folks, welcome to the new Let's Play. This is Total Annihilation Kingdoms. I've had a little bit of trouble with it crashing, so hopefully I've resolved that issue now. This game is very nostalgic for me, maybe one of the most nostalgic games I've ever played. One of the reasons is that it occupies a lot of firsts in my gaming career. It was the first PC game I had ever played, outside of Solitaire and other stuff that just come, little basic things that come with Windows. It was the first real-time strategy game I had ever played. When I first played it and all that stuff, I still remember that where I think I clicked on this, which is just set up a map where you face an AI. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was just running around with my starting character, building towers and stuff, and firing at guys. I didn't even know what an RTS was. I thought I was just in control of that one guy. The fact that I could build things, I just found completely fascinating. Yeah, I was pretty young at the time, so you can keep that in mind. So basically, there are, in the original game, there are 4 factions. There's an expansion pack. The original campaign is called the Book of Darien. The land that it's based in is called Darien. The expansion pack is called the Iron Plague, and it adds an additional race. I'm not going to play the Iron Plague in this playthrough, but I may come back and play that again some point in the future. I don't know when, but we'll see. There are 4 races. We'll start with Airmon is the first race. There are 2 low magic races and 2 high magic races. Airmon is like the strong low magic race. Their units are have a lot of hit points and hit harder. But there isn't much in the way of magic. They don't know, at least not as much as the other ones. But it's like knights and swordsmen and horsemen, and later on you get like cannons and things like that. Then you have Teros, which is the main villain of the game. They're high magic, and they have like demons and undead and things like that, and they're kind of evil. Then you have Varuna, which is the sort of a seafaring low magic race. Honestly, Varuna is pretty unbalanced, unlike a lot of water, a map that has a lot of water, because none of the other races really get the same amount of water-capable units or ability to transport units. People may argue with me about that, but that's my impression. Now, on land, they're equal with the other races. I mean, they have the ships are like in addition to the normal units that each race has. So, my guess is that they weren't really intending for a lot of water combat, or maybe I'm just wrong about that. And then finally, you have Zaun, which has a pretty interesting build mechanic. I really sucked with Zaun when I first started playing, because I didn't understand how to build units properly with them, which I'll explain when I get there anyway. But they're kind of like the beast folk, wild hunters, and stuff like that. They're also high magic. One of the interesting things about this, so another first of this game for me was that it's, I think, the first online game I had ever played as well. In addition to the first RTS and first PC game, it was the first game I'd ever played online. Way back in the day, I think it was also, I joined the first clan, and I think the only clan I'd ever joined in an online game, and that was the War Gods, and I was known as Pegasus War God, and I don't know why I thought it was cool then. It sounds pretty lame to me now, but I liked it then, and it was fun. But yeah, they had their whole network on there called the Boneyards, which lasted for a year or two, and I think the company that made this went under, and their servers closed down. Then another one came up called GameSpy or something like that, and they hosted it for a while, and then that went down under too, or they stopped doing it for this one. I don't quite remember. don't quite remember. But anyway, I don't think there's any more doing this online. I think it's going to be mostly exposition on this, at least on the first part of this video. So if you want to skip ahead to the action, you can. But anyway, if there is a way to play online anymore, I don't know what it is. I didn't look it up. I'm going to play the campaign anyway. So basically, a little bit of backstory. I'm going to put a link to the manual where you can read more of it. And the intro video already told you a little bit. But basically, there's an Atlantis type of civilization that existed 5,000 or so years, or 6,000 or so years before the present, the time the game takes place. And they were really big magic users, and they're called the Kandrins. And the Kandrins set up these like there's like these rocks that are like super magical and give you extra magical powers and make you really powerful, like artifacts. Or I think they call them legacies. There's a legacy for water, fire, earth, and air, and then there's like a general one that's the world, and that's the most powerful one. And they had those divided amongst 5 different supreme rulers of the Kandran Empire. Things were good for a long time, but then, everybody independently decided the best thing they could possibly do was be a jerk. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but there's a big catastrophe. Almost everyone died. Who knows why? It was just a big magical upheaval where, things would burst, for no reason, like boil alive and things. The manual explains it in a lot of detail. So anyway, that happened, and a few, but very small numbers of people and animals and trees survived, and they slowly repopulated. After the catastrophe, they were all really distrustful of magic, and but they slowly, things returned to normal with the exception that magic didn't exist. Before, during the Kandran Empire, there was everybody could use magic at least a little bit, but afterward, everybody shunned it because they blamed it for the catastrophe, which is basically true. 4,000 or 5,000 years go by. I think it was 4,000 or 5,000. I don't remember. A mysterious baby is found in the woods by a fisherman. This baby turns out to be somebody called Garakias. He goes against the grain, and he's who knows where he came from or what his origin is, but he's clearly has something like there's magical properties about it. Even the fisherman can tell. He grows up or whatever and starts researching magic again secretly, even though everyone else is like very distrusting of it. He uses his high talents to not only do magic and somewhat secretly, but he also invents various technologies, including a better type of boat, and builds himself quite an empire. Civil War breaks out. He's a pretty good general or whatever, and is able to basically conquer everybody else. At the end of the war, one of the desperate factions goes against, and this is in Taros actually, goes against their own rules and gets some magicians to try and stop them. Garakias' army. Garakias reveals that he's the big magician. It kills the entire city somehow, or at least makes them disappear. Who knows if they were actually killed. Becomes the unquestioned ruler of the whole of the Darien. Ends up marrying a woman, having 4 kids by him, which are the 4 leaders of the various factions I just told you: Aramon, Varuna, Zon, and Taros. So he has those 4 kids with his wife. One day, there's a squall or something at sea while they're sort of kind of going out in one of his boats. The boat sinks. He manages to save the kids, but the wife dies, and that sort of makes him really depressed. Or the mother dies. That makes him really depressed. Fast forward some time, he's not really ruling like he's supposed to, and he decides that instead of passing it on to one child, he divides the areas into the 4 zones: Aramon, Varuna, Taros, and Zon. And he gives them one of the 5, during at some point he got those 5 legacies or whatever, and he gives each one of his children one of the legacies. He gives Elson the leader of Aramon, the Earth Pendant. He gives Karina, the ruler of the island area, Varuna, the water ring. He gives Thursha, the ruler of Zon, and these are all his kids, by the way. He gives her, it's like the wind bracelet. I think it was a bracelet, wind bracelet, and he gives Loken, the son that he gives to Taros, the fire scepter. So they each have one of these like legacy artifacts that the ancient conjuring wizards, head wizards had. He keeps the best one for himself, that the one that represents the world or whatever. So they rule for a long time, but eventually Garakias decides to just disappear, and nobody knows what happens to him. He just disappears one day. Another 1,000 years goes by, and the various leaders of each of these countries, all of which are Garakias' children, decide they start disliking each other a lot. Taros and Zon wants to use magic freely. Aramon and Varuna don't think it should only be used in extreme circumstances. That's kind of what Garakias was. That was his original rule. He's like, we're not going to, even though we could use all this magic, we're not just going to use it. Only in the most dire of circumstances will we do this. So that's how you get the low magic, high magic of the two settings. So anyway, they're at this point, and situations are stiff, and or situations are tense, and war is basically about to break out because everybody's in a bad situation. And the course of the game sort of tells you what happens. You've already seen the intro, so you kind of have a little bit of backstory. I increased that backstory a little bit. One thing, these videos are going to be a little bit longer than some of my other videos. The reason for this is that I'm unable to start and stop my video recorder from within the game. So when I'm recording this, I have to start it, then load up the game, play, close the game down, then cancel the video recording. Yeah, I was making sure it's still working because I definitely had some issues with the game freezing, and I had to redo this a couple times. So my way to mitigate having to edit the beginning and ends of these videos as much is just to make them longer. So I'm going to aim for each video to be around an hour long, probably. I think longer than that is a little bit risky. But anyway, yeah. So you kind of have the idea. You should have already been able to see the introductory cutscene. So I'm just going to skip past it when I click on it here, if it even loads. I'm not sure if it does. I'm just going to skip past it. And we're going to go ahead and start on the first mission. So thank you for watching. Sorry if you didn't like that exposition, but we're going to get into it now. And I already kind of got in here a little bit and was playing around with it. So we're going to do the original campaign first. This is our first mission, All Hell Broken Loose. And each mission has a little cutscene in front of it. And some narration. So while that's going on, I'm not actually going to say anything, and I'm just going to let it play. But